Thanks for clicking on the video. Before I get started on all the installation, I want to make one note to this that I made some changes to the settings that I give you in the installation video, and you want to make sure you watch the video till the very end. I'm going to change the settings so what you see in the installation piece ends up getting switched, and I'll explain why. So let's get started. Welcome back to the shop here at Basin Motorsports. So today I'm going to get started on a long video of putting an airbag suspension on my Corvette Z06. It's a 2004 model, sitting behind. So there you go. There it is. So this is going to be a pretty long video, and I'm going to break it up by chapters. So we'll go over what the kit is, what is in the kit, installing it, and then we're going to start doing all the installation piece by piece. And at the end, we're going to check how everything fits. Okay, so here's the kit that's going to go on the car. The total kit itself is from Airforce Suspension. And it's going to come in two different pieces or two different boxes. On the left-hand side is going to be our airbag struts. And they do come with some holders and some extra pieces there for the suspension. On the right-hand side is the P1 management. This is their version of the management system that comes with it. Inside of that, you can see the silver tank, the bullet there. That's the air tank. The compressor's in front of it. You have your other pieces, some air hose, the diagram to put everything together, the battery cable, the air hose itself, and then all of your management pieces. You have your brains to it and your controls. So this supposedly will go on without modifying anything on the suspension. You do not need to change to the rear C6 uppers or the C6 Corvette uppers. I've seen other people do switch to them because they're going extremely low on it. I don't know that I'm going to go that far because I have stock fenders and such. Otherwise, if it goes as planned, nothing needs to be changed other than just taking off the old, putting in the new, and going from there. All right, so if you're not familiar with the differences in the C5 Corvette models, there is the FRC, which is the kind of the trunk, the coupe, if you want to call it that, or the hatchback. And so the Z06 is the coupe, which is kind of a trunk. So it has a trunk piece that comes up. The hatchback obviously has the glass and the hatch that comes up. And inside I have a foam barrier right in there that keeps sound out from the cabin to the trunk. Inside of that, there's also these pockets, if you want to call them that, storage bins, however you want to say it. There's one on the left or the driver's side. There's a big one in the center. And there is a second one on the right-hand side, kind of right there. So what I'm going to do in order to mount this tank in there, I'm going to make a false floor that's going to cover everything. I'm going to make a hatch that comes up that I can take out this panel, still use the center. My compressor is going to go in on the right-hand side, so I'm just going to lose that pocket and mount the compressor over top of it on the board. The tank's going to mount on the board. That way I can still keep my foam noise barrier in there, and then I'm going to cut out the section there so I can keep this pocket. So I can keep some jumper cables or water or anything else that I want to keep in that's not going to go in here. So in order to do this to start with, I'm going to put some blue tape in here that is going to identify the edge of where the board needs to be. It should be about 24 inches from front to rear. I'm going to take this foam out. That is my visual barrier of where it goes. And then I'm going to start measuring out the shape of this. I'm going to mimic it, or I'm going to use a piece of big cardboard I have here to define the shape before I cut the wood. But just overall, it's usually it's about 24 inches fore aft and 60 inches or 5 feet, not including this curve around your wheel wells. So tape. It's going to define it. We're going to mock it up in cardboard, and then I'm going to definitely wrap this in something. It's either going to be vinyl or vinyl reversed to where the fuzzy side on the back is going to be there. Now, one other thing to note, some people have asked this that nobody's really had a question for, is how low can it go and how high can it go? I actually want this kit to go high so that I have easier time getting in and out of my road because it's dirt road, gravel and such. So I'm going to take some measurements on each side to where this sits, the top of the arch on each wheel, just for reference, just kind of a low and a high on the front and rears, just a little bit of data to see. And then we'll see as it tucks down in how much is this wheel going to tuck with stock fenders and stock wheels? We'll find out. All right, now I have the line marked in there and the foam barrier taken out, the noise barrier. So you can just kind of see on here where that indentation is that you would put in a covered panel there if you didn't have the barrier. Slightly behind, it's probably, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 inches, somewhere in that range behind. But there is your mark. So you can build a board essentially almost from rear to at least that mark itself, or you can always tuck it underneath the foam board safely. But at least there's your visual reference of how big the board needs to be. And I'm going to make it removable once the tank is in there and everything else, just so I have a little bit of storage left. Now let's start fitting in our board. All right, so I got my dimensions pretty much to start with together, I guess you'd say. It's kind of muddy, not very to scale, but this is what it looks like, roughly where I'm going to start with. Now I move that over to cardboard, and this is what it looks like in the car. So these are the dimensions that I had a sheet of cardboard, and then I've cut up some extra boxes for my little wing pieces. But that's your 45 across the front, and there's your rough shape going down into kind of the side pockets, the cubbies, however you want to call them. So the car itself is symmetrical about the center line. So I have a center line drawn on my cardboard, which goes right with my lock. If I'd actually stand in the center, you see it goes straight up. So the left and the right are similar. So you only have to mock up one side as long as you know where your center is for when you cut your board. What that does is it will give me both my little wings there, and I've added some cardboard in around my radiuses just to make sure I get a good snug fit with the wood, and then of course have some covering on it. And then on this one, this is my area here, so this cubby is going to be cut out and left open, and that will be my cut line right there. So that'll mock up, that outside edge will mock up on the passenger side where the compressor is going to mount to. The driver side will be cut and be left open. And now I need to mark up where the cutout here is going to go. That's what I need to do next, is figure out where my center pocket, however you want to call it, is going to go, so I can have a removable panel here, and then decide where to mount, because the air tank will go up here, it'll mount in there, and then I will have a reduced pocket that I can kind of pop out of there and still use that storage without losing it, and it won't have to worry about fooling with the air tank or affecting any of the controls. All right, so now we have our cardboard traced out to our plywood. Now this is 1/4 inch plywood. It's something I had in the shop. It's going to be sturdy enough to mount the air tank and the compressor to, but it's not thick enough that it's going to add a lot of weight. That's one thing I didn't want to add as a ton of weight to the rear of the car. By the time you get all your pieces in there, it's probably going to be, I don't know, an extra maybe 5-10 pounds. I'll see if I can weigh it just to be sure. But here is your piece. Now this is the piece I mocked up, so I traced it out here. So I had my outside shape, and then you can see right along the edge here, this is my pocket, cubby, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be cut off. So this will be cut here on this side. It will go up and around. Now on this side, you can see where my original was, my trial, and then where I actually like the shape here. So I'm going to add a little bit of radius into that. It'll go around, it'll go up and around, and this is where my compressor will mount onto that. That'll be the passenger side. And the worst thing is, if you cut it and screw it up, well, it's just plywood. If you cut it too big, it easily cuts again. So now I'm going to cut this to shape based on the marks there with my pen, and then I'm going to go test it in the car. Just to show you, there's my center line of my cardboard. My finger would go. There's my center line in my wood. Just as I flipped the cardboard, flipped it over, you always knew on both ends there's a mark there, just to ensure that the center of the cardboard and the wood mark are always going to align as you flip it over. Or if you just mock up both sides, it really doesn't matter. Just clamp it in and draw it up. Now once I got the board cut, one thing I found is that I really couldn't get it to fit down in there, just because the trunk, you can see, has a lip all the way around. and I couldn't feed it in from the inside to get it around the wheel wells very well, so I ended up just splitting it in half and then started laying everything in. So that's my split. I will then have to cut obviously some of this out for my pocket, and then I can make my pocket back again. Now I'm just starting to lay in everything. The kit doesn't come with instructions. It comes with a diagram basically of how everything should go, but it doesn't give you, I won't say great instructions for the tank and where the hoses go and everything else. So thankfully there's a couple guys on Instagram that have done the kit previously. They are graciously answering questions, and it's kind of a choose your own adventure just to put it all together. So I'm trying to decide, do I like this? I may move the brain module that has the P1 on it, move that behind the tank there and push the tank forward. I'm not sure. I really want to put the barrier back in and see how it fits, and then I'll decide how and where to kind of put everything else to make it fit. All right, so back to a little more on the progress. So here's the wood, and with the piece here, this is the foam piece that's got the Z06 on it. I actually had to cut off about another 1.5 inches to get that to sit right. So that edge, this edge right here, is another 1.5 inches shorter or rearward. Got everything trimmed out, everything lined up, my marks for my compressor and my tank, and I will mount the P1 management piece at the end. It's really got some really small holes in it, so I'm probably just going to use some wood screws to drive in there. So from there, this is my false floorboard. I'm going to put in some pieces right here at the edge to give it some support at the front, and then it's got support on the edge. So if I show you taking this out, you can see right there I put myself a little hand notch in there. I can just reach in, pull that up, and then it is supported on the sides. You know, you have your in-betweens between the kind of little pockets or the cubbies there. So it just sits on the sides, and then on the front I'm going to go ahead and mount just a piece of the plywood that I took off. I'm going to mount that on the front edge on the underside of each of our pieces here. This piece, and of course this piece on the underside, and it's just going to have a little bit of a lip hanging out, and that's going to support it. 3 sides there, and then the back I don't need. It's a touching, so it's going to be supported, but pretty simple process there. Once I get all that done, I'm going to put some holes in it, and then I think we're about ready to put some vinyl on this and see if I want to do it on the inside or the outside, so it's fuzzy on the outside or it's just smooth. I'm going to find out. But that's how I'm doing this, all these pieces, and then I'm going to start mounting everything up. All right, so we're about ready to get the plywood wrapped in something black and probably fuzzy. So I've got the compressor mounted in there, just 2 bolts to make sure it all fits. The rear 2 actually go down into the pocket there, so I don't need to shorten those. The front is already shortened so that it sits just below the board. Let's see, this piece right here is actually, you can see, is mounted to this side, so it acts as 2 things. It acts as a lip for the cover so that it has some support on the front, and it also acts as a support so that this can't go above this, so it kind of pulls them down. And you can barely see in there, there's a little bit of silver right there. See that silver? That's just a piece of aluminum I've got screwed to the back side. So again, the front side can't come up against the other side. Now when you put the tank in there, I have 4 riv nuts embedded into the wood. Those are from a previous project. And then I've got some fasteners that I already put in there, tightened, and cut off so that they only come down just to the bottom of the riv nuts. That way they don't stick into the carpet on the bottom. Everything looks good. I will mount the P1 management piece, the box right there. It doesn't really have any fasteners or anything I need to worry about, so I will mount that at the end. I need to get the vinyl on there, and then get the tank mounted, get the compressor mounted, and then I think, don't jinx it, but I think we're about ready to start wiring. I'm going to jump ahead now to the plywood being wrapped. This really isn't very difficult. This is just, this is a kind of a charcoalish gray thin carpet I had here. So if I show you, this is stuff you can pick up at probably like a Joann's or a fabric store or something. It's something I had here. I'd love it if it was black, but I don't have any black. So moving on. So this is the false floor panel for the center cover, but just to show you. So I glued it to this flat surface on everything there, and then it's just stapled on the back. Thankfully, this is the pretty easy piece all the way around, and this is what it looks like totally in the car. There are your three pieces in there nestled together. So on the left-hand side or the driver's side there, P1 management will go there. These 4 holes are where the rivnets are, just for my ability to find them when I place the tank in there. And then I've got the compressor there. You can see the 3 dots. That's where the compressor goes down through. So I can bolt that up. And then there's the panel. Now, one thing I just noticed, if I can get it to focus, that panel should actually have come back a little bit longer, but I normally run a net side to side in here, so that's going to be covered up, and then there's your hand space in there. Now, again, black would have probably looked a little bit better, would have matched a little bit better, but I didn't have any, and I don't really want to go to town and try and go on this hunt to find something. So gray is going to work. I'm going to next get everything mounted in there. So I'll at least get the P1 mounted there, the tank strapped in there. I'll get the compressor mounted right there. And then I think we're ready to start taking the suspension apart and running lines. Now, before I get the tank mounted in there, I really couldn't find a good reference to how this should be or how you can put it. So the way it's made, it has multiple orifices to basically put in everything, and you can do it how you want to. So how I'm going to have my setup, this is the rear. It faces the rear of the car. So the oil water separator, I should say, coming in from the compressor. So it will come in and go into this side. You can see right there, there's a plug on the bottom. If I go down, there is a plug, and that is going to be the water drain out of the tank. I tried to put in the little pull tab to the valve you pull on, but it's actually too tall the way it is to mount in there. So if you mount your tank a little higher than these brackets, you can do that. So instead, I just put it on the side, pointed down. That way I could just pull straight down and it will release the pressure and help vent it. If I need to drain water out, I'm going to have to pull that plug on the bottom. There's one of my lines. And then looking at the other side, so again, this is the side right here. This is where the compressor is going to go in. This is the passenger side. This is the forward-facing area. So this faces the front edge of the car. So that's my line coming down out. That's my pressure switch. And then again, on the bottom there is another line. So you have 2 lines, however you want to do it, a pressure switch. And if you space this up a little bit more, you could probably get different routing of everything, but this will work. It all uses the same pressure inside the tank. It's just a matter of how you want to do yours, but this is how I'm doing mine. So the next piece of the process is to start getting things ready for airlines to come through and for the new suspension to go on. So I've got the car up on the quick jacks here. That takes it up off the body. You can then, if I show you, get down under here, you then can take your leaf spring off. You see it running right there. It is right here. There's your leaf spring on front and back on the bottom of the control arm. So you can take out your lowering bolts or your height adjustment bolts. And then you can take out the center there. That will take out the spring on both sides. You can do that front and back. And then your suspension out is off. You just need to take off your shocks and struts from the front and rear. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I don't know what sizes for the bolts and things are, but that's okay. I will figure it out, and we'll take all this off front and rear and start getting things aligned. So I'm going to throw in some shocks or a strut on each end, just to kind of visualize in my brain where the airline needs to come in. And then we'll go from there. Now, one thing to note real quick is that the struts themselves, you want to make sure that they are even side to side. So you can measure from the bottom of the casing here and the top of this. You can just move your adjusters out of the way. Just measure it to make sure on both sides. So obviously this is one set, this is one set. Just make sure that they are consistent side to side. That way you know your car is going to be even when you put it all in. You can adjust it later on once you get everything kind of situated in, but that will at least get you a starting point to where the car is even, and you can adjust it from there. Now, one thing that was noted in another video I watched, I think it was from Fitment Industries or VTT Performance. I can't remember. I watched both. They mentioned measuring from the center of the hub. So I did this with the car on the ground. Obviously, the wheels and tires were there. Center of the wheel up to the center of the fender. So that way you know your OEM or wherever it is right now set up so that you can adjust from there. Now, I did do that so you can see before OEM level, since everything was stock, you have your front left, right, rear left, rear right. This is here, this is ground to stock fender lip. So even there, but hub was different somehow. I don't even know how that was. Just slightly off. You had a 1/4 inch on the front and then basically a 1/4 inch on the rear. All right, so we have the front suspension now installed. I haven't run the lines or any of the wiring yet because I wanted to get these in to kind of visualize and get excited that everything was in. So here are the front airbags going in. Now, the top you can reach from, these are a hold and drive to tighten them down, so you can put a wrench on the nut up through here on the bottom side. And then on the top side, there is a Allen wrench in there. So you hold that. You can do it with just an Allen wrench or a hex key of the right size on a ratchet, just to hold it in there, and then just tighten that down and you just snug it down as best you can. And then on your bottom mount, you just have to be patient with it, kind of twist it around. Your air fitting should be to the rear of the car on both sides of the front. And then you're just going to have to use some wrenches and just kind of twist it around to get everything to line up. When you put everything back together, just make sure you do, I prefer to use some blue Loctite on it or thread sealant on it just for everything, just to make sure it fits and stays secured. Now, when I did take out the front leaf spring, I did have to remove the subframe bolts there with the lower control arm. So that's what these are right here. These are what changes your camber, so make sure you align them up. There are degree marks on your washers and such on each side, so make sure that they all line up. I'd probably just put a mark from your washer to your subframe before you take it apart, if you have to do it that way, and then that way you can know to put it back together. If you're going to go get an alignment, get it pretty close, and they can adjust it after that. So there you can see kind of the inside. That's where mine was, kind of like a 5 o'clock position or so on the front, and then at a 6 o'clock on the back bolt. There you go. That's everything in there. No more leaf spring. So now as far as the settings, nobody's really measured everything. So I'm going to tell you what I did from the base down here of the silver to the top of the piece right here that turns. This was 2 1/8 inches. That's where I'm starting it at, or basically the outside to outside on the lock washers here, the orange piece. That's 2 1/8. And then my sway bar, new sway bar end links here that come with the kit, after they're tightened up, these are 5 1/2 inches. So that's the center of the dimple right there, all the way down to the center of this bolt right here. So that's 5 1/2 inches on each side. What that does is it gives me a pretty good amount of room here that I can always check on. There's room under here to the steering arm for the sway bar, and then I'll just have to be cautious of this. If this touches here, this subframe bolt or not, you can always cut a little bit of this off, because this is an alignment feature, this bit right here before the threads. And you can go ahead and cut that off. Cut off a little bit. I won't say a lot. Cut off maybe an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch off of that, if you need to. Otherwise, I'm going to set it like this, and then I'll adjust it if I need to as I cycle the suspension. Now also, I'll note from the center of the hub here up to this lip is 15.5 on each side, just for reference. We'll get it all installed, get all the kit in there, and then we'll start adjusting everything. Once I get to the end, I'll let you know how everything ends up. But that's where these alignment pieces are right now. And now I need to move to the rear. Now here's a look at the rear struts installed. So these are set up. The top of the gold at the bottom here to the base here is 1 7/8. Basically the outside to the outside of your locking collars, your orange there. You can see the air fitting is on this side. So this is a tie bar, does not rotate. On that side is your axle. It does rotate. So I'm trying to move everything away from the axle as it moves up and spins, etc. So you've got a sway bar there. You can go off that. But there is your piece. Now on the driver's side, pretty much the same thing. It is set up at 1 7/8. I already have those locked down. And you can see that the nipple here, where it was on the back side, on the passenger side, on the driver's side, it's almost in line with the control arm. So here's your control arm, almost in line with that. It's going to stay away from the axle. I'm going to bring the hose in from the back side to make sure that I don't get near that axle. And everything is set up. It's all tightened in there. Everything's torqued to spec. And if you guys don't have a service manual, I would say pick one up. I'll put a link down in the description to a Haynes manual I have. You know what? They're pretty nice to have when you have a question on how to do stuff. So everything's locked down. Now I need to take out these. I'm going to take out the liners, basically on the rear and the fronts. And I'll show you the rears. I'm going to take the whole liner out. The fronts, I'm just going to take out the bottom section. So, you know, on the Corvettes, right here where the ducting would be if it was going straight out the door, on the bottom edge there is a panel. Now, everybody else that I've talked to said that they brought theirs airline for the front wheels out through the rocker and up and back. So, you know, coming in there, it's going to go up and around through the engine bay, and you can bring it in through the top side here. So you can do that and then route it down to your air hose location or your air nipple there. So let's go ahead and get these panels out, and I'll show you what I'm going to work with to start moving airlines. Now, once you have your suspension all in place, the next piece is obviously going to be your wiring and your airlines. Now that I have everything placed where I want it to be, my P1 management controller, the compressor, the air tank, it's time to start running the lines. So right now I am running all of the lines, and I have a lot of the internal wiring up through the console done. So this is the end of the wires here, or sorry, the air hoses going in. Now, just kind of show you, I'm going to bring them out through the side here. So you've got your wheel well on the inside here. It's going to come through the carpet into where the P1 management is. Just going to show you the locations I've got for everything. So on both sides of the C5, you're going to have this kind of this indentation here down in the floor. So I'm running my rears out each side of those. So I've got one here, and this is on the left or the driver's side. The right-hand side is similar to that. I'll show you how that comes out. So now if I show you underneath, that's the bottom of the indentation. So I have it coming straight out the bottom of it. It's coming down in to where the hose is. So I just kind of show you there. It's looped around, if I can kind of show you. So it's coming out of there. It's looped up. That is your parking brake cable and your ABS sensor wire there. So I've got them zip tied in a couple places there just to kind of hold it. And then there is one of my grounds. I think that's going to my P1 management. That's one of the grounds that's on the body itself, or it's on the frame, really, the hydro frame on the back. I have a second hole there of the negative coming out and going to that. Since this is a composite car on a lot of it, you have to be pretty selective on your grounds. Since that is a factory ground, I'm going to go ahead and use that for a lot of the pieces. Even though they're outside, they will be behind the wheel housing, the plastic liner, I should say. And I live in the desert, so I don't have a lot of worry of corrosion with that ground. Now on the right rear, you can kind of see the same thing. It's coming out that little indentation down to the brake cable and the ABS sensor. And then you have your air line there. So you can kind of see the gold to it. It's just looped around. By running it that way, you're going to keep it out of the tire, and it should be behind. So you can see the two clips there. That is your screw pieces for your plastic wheel liner. So everything should be behind that, and you should have no issues with it contacting the suspension or the tire while it's going. Now as the front, I'm going to show you where that's coming through. So what you're going to see here is this is the pull handle for the hood. You have your cables that go through there right under that foam, and then where that zip tie is, that is holding my air line for the left front wheel or the left front suspension, and that's going through the body. So it's a composite body. You can drill a hole right through that, and in those I am putting through the body, I'm using a bushing that I found at a local home improvement store that will act as a kind of like a grommet. You can use a rubber one if you want to, but I'm going to put some boom mat or some butyl over the top of it, and that'll help seal up the hole. But that's going through there, and that zip tie right now is just in place, giving it support on the inside of where that's going through. Now on the back side, or I guess the front side of that wall, when it comes out, you're going to have a crash beam right there. This is your piece that I've got the zip ties to. That black tube is the airline coming through, so that comes through. It's in a safe place. It is also supported to the crash beam right there, and then it's going to run up on the inside of the engine bay. And then I have it kind of running down through there. So it's going to run down inside on the back side of the suspension. Just kind of show you there is the airline connection, and this is what it looks like in the engine bay. You can see it just kind of running through, and the zip tie is holding it there. So if I just kind of lean over, it runs up on the inside there. So this is the washer tank, the brake reservoir, and then your clutch reservoir. You can kind of just see it coming up through the backside. All of it is protected. You don't have to worry about heat, this routing, and it's held in place there. So now I just need to make sure the suspension doesn't have any problems. All right, I'll just kind of show you what these bushings look like just for reference. So they're really just a small little tube, if you want to call them that. These are 1/4 inch, which is what the outside of the air hose is. So you can just find the drill bit. I'd have to look what it is, but there's a drill bit that basically fits the sleeve. So this just basically fits in the body, and the air hose goes straight through. It'll just prevent it from rubbing. It's a composite car. You probably don't have to worry about it. I'm just being a nervous Nelly on it, so I'm going to go ahead and put these in. Now also, when I do that, when I run the battery line in, I'm going to go ahead and put a plastic grommet in also. Just for extra security. No big deal to pop that in there. But just go ahead and put that in the body. I'm almost done running it for the passenger front, and I'll show you that shortly. All right, so here is going to be the passenger front side going through. So the red wire there with the grommet, that is the battery wire. They're going to run from the battery connection to your compressor in the back, or the relay, I should say, before the compressor. This wire here is LED, but you can also see right below it, there is the airline coming in. There's just too much in the way here, but you can see right there, there's a bundle going through that, that's the BCM out to your ECM connection. And so I've got everything kind of stacked there. So there's my off-road lights, the airline, and then the connection. And then that rubber grommet is, that is a factory piece. Now, of course, when you pull everything through the other side, you can have your ECM. So that blue wire is the battery going to the amp. The red wire is the going to the relay from the battery to the compressor. And then there's a couple extra wires in there. That's your air hose, everything else. And then coming up through here, through the top there, is going down into the piece. So all the way up, all the way through. And if you just kind of look down through, I've got it looped just so there's not a kink into it. I already kinked that, trying to get it. That is the fuse that comes with the kit. And then that's going to come over here to the jumper piece, to your extra there that everything can go to. That is your battery extra on the end of your fuse block. That's hot. That goes right to your battery. So you can do that versus going to the battery itself. Everything goes there. Hopefully I'm not going to overload it. Otherwise I'm going to come up with a better plan. But you can see everything is there. It's just pulling off a 12 volt coming off that. Now with everything run in here, I've already tested it, so I know it works. I did have a couple air leaks that were easily fixed, and I had a wiring issue that I had to take the car back apart and fix. But everything runs like it should. Key turns on, the system pressures up, so the tank should go to about 175 psi, somewhere in there. Mine goes to 171 according to the manual controller, but I'll just give you a look. There's the tank. There's my compressor coming in. So just running into, there is the air water separator, I guess. Filter it out. So I've got it kind of angled here. Otherwise it touches. That looks good. Everything going in the P1, everything looks right. I labeled everything as it came out with blue painter's tape, cut it off to the length, and then just put one zip tie in. So everything is neat and tidy. And there's the antenna in the corner. So otherwise, now with everything in, I have been starting to play with everything. When I set it down, so I'll just kind of step back here, show you, it's sitting on cinder blocks right there, just so I could get under the car easier and look at everything, make sure nothing rubs as it goes down. Right now I've got each end sitting at 100 psi. The front's top out. I could feel it. It clicks. And then the rears aren't there yet. But look at the wheel gap on this. Yeah, that's definitely not what I thought it was going to be. I thought my measurements would be okay. They look terrible. But if I air it out with 0 psi, this is what it drops down to. Now with that lower down, all that does is it drops it 1.25 inches when I go from 100 psi in the front to 0, airing it out, as you say. So what I need to do now is make some adjustments. My coilovers are adjusted too long. So when I go to 0 on the psi, that thing should sit down there another, well, a couple inches really. Let's see. If I measure. I'm going to say 2 inches lower that way needs to come down. So this would be, this is about 14.5. Right around here where it's just going to sit, where it's just tucked, is about 12.5. So I need to adjust that down a little bit further to get everything to sit lower. Okay, so I made my adjustments on everything, and I'm just going to show you the dimensions on all the changes I made, just so you have something to go by for yourself if you do this. So when I first initially set everything up, the front strut from the collars, so that is your lock washers, your lock collars on the struts themselves. That is the bottom of the top one to the top of the bottom one. I initially set them up 2 1/8 inch. I adjusted them down to 1.5. Sway bar I left at 5.5 each on each iteration. Rear strut I changed from 1 7/8 down to 1 inch even. 1 inch even is about the minimum distance you can go, because the threads start to protrude far enough into the bottom mount that 1 inch will allow you to still put the bolt in. All right, so now looking at our dimensions. So the very left, you can see there's the front left, front right, rear left, rear right. Before it was 26 inch from floor to top of the fender. It was 26 3/4. On the rears, it was 28 1/8. On the hub, it was 14 7/8 to 15 1/8, so a little bit off. On the rear, it was 16 and 15 3/4, so we are 1/4 inch off there. on each side. So interesting stuff. Now, what did I change? Well, the ride height after with the airbags on. So what I'm going to go direct comparison, ride height is going to be 14 7/8, now 14 1/8. So that's 3/4 of an inch drop at 65 PSI on the ride height. 15 1/8 went down to 14, so that's 1 1/8 there. So big change on the right side. So to match itself, that's a 65 PSI. The rear left, or the driver's side rear, went from 16 to 14.5 at 85 PSI. And the rear right, or the passenger rear, went from 15 3/4 down to 14 1/4. So that's 1.5 inch. Same amount of drop, and that's with 100 PSI. Doing my best to level the left to right. As you see before, they were a little bit lower on the right, and it's still that way on the airbags, even with a little bit more air in them. Now, if I want to lift things up, I can go from 14 1/8 up to 15 3/8. So that's an inch, inch and a quarter going up at 130 PSI. Same thing there, 14 on the, the front right goes from 14 to 15 1/4. The rear left goes from 14.5 to 15 1/4. And the rear right goes from 14 1/4 up to 14 7/8. So you can definitely lift it up from ride height. But if you notice, the fronts go roughly the same, even if it's not a little bit more on the maximum amount or some lifting them up. To the rears go from 16 to 15 1/4. So the rear is definitely lower in any case. Now the question is, what happens when you air it out? So right now, the way it's set up with the fronts, they go to 11 7/8 from the hub to the top of the fender, which tucks the tires, and the rears go from 16, what it was, down to 11.5. And that tucks the tires. So let me go ahead and show you what these look like here. So this is what it's going to look like if you were driving with it maxed out. So if you're going to do some speed bumps or anything else, this lifts it up a little bit more than OEM. So if you're going through speed bumps or whatever it is, you can definitely see there's a gap between the front and the rear tires to the fender. You can see the spoiler there sits down just like it is. All right, so this is what it's going to be considered ride height. So this is a little bit shorter than stock. So this is about an inch and a half lower, somewhere in there, to what it was on stock. So you're looking at 14 to 14.5 inches from the hub there. Still a little bit of wheel gap, but you've got some movement in there, and I have all of these struts set to the middle. There is 32 presets from full soft to full hard, so I've got them set at about 15 to 16 on there. Should be about halfway, so that is your middle. And of course, what everybody wants to see is it drops, so I'm going to raise it back up, and then I'm going to lower it all the way down and let you enjoy all that. So now, one thing to keep in mind is that your front splitter now is going to touch the ground, but I show you here, that baby's sitting down there. Sitting down there. Like I said, it tucks the tires front and rear. So there's your front. You can see it's definitely in there. And these are a 255 tire on the front, 255 Continental. So there's plenty of room in there. Let's see. Yeah, they could definitely fit a 275 in there probably. That's probably about the biggest you'd want to go if you're going to try and do this. And then there's your rear. So that is a 295 tucked in there. And it does not touch, but by golly, it is snug in there. So this is going to wrap up the installation of the Airforce suspension C5 Corvette air suspension on it. Everything is matched out, and right now I'm totally not sure how to download the app to it so I can program my controller. I can manually do it off the manual controller, which is fine, but it's just a pain in the butt to have to constantly up, down, bump it to try to get everything level when I could set it up. There's supposedly an app that I need to figure out how to download. So if you guys have any questions on any of what I did here, I tried to show you where I routed everything, how I mounted everything, and then all of the settings I have done. Now, I haven't driven it yet, so once I drive it, I may change some of the settings here. So if you buy the kit and you want to put it together and you put it in, you can definitely try the settings that I have given you here. That'll give you a pretty good baseline to see if you like it. And then from there, you can make your own adjustments. You may want it more up. You may want it more down. I don't know if that's even possible, but you guys can decide what you're going to do. If you're going to do wide body fenders and different tires. I have stock suspension other than the air struts. So stock wheels, tires, and the control arms and everything else. So everything seems to be fine. Lowering it down, raising it up, everything seems to be good with no contact. So I'll let you know if something changes, airlines pinch or whatever else, I'll have to fix it. Otherwise, if you have any questions, check the video description. I'll put links to everything I can, to tools, to parts I used, and of course the kit. Any questions, comments, leave them down below. See you next time. Now, you didn't think I would let you go without showing you the finished results. So, there it is. Pretty dirty, scuffed up. Needs to wash and a detail, but there it is sitting down. It's sitting down on the chassis, or pretty darn close to it. Tucking a 255, 295. Can't beat that, huh? See you next time. All right, so thanks for watching all the way through the video. Now, one thing I did notice after I had set everything up and started checking things is that I made some mistakes on the initial strut setting. So I had originally said that I was going to do a 1.5 inch on the initial front strut. I really set it at 2 1/8 beginning, and I adjusted it to 1.5, and what was happening is the tire was hitting the inner fender on the front. So I ended up changing that back to 2 1/4. In order to do that, I did 5 3/4 on the sway bar length. That is basically from bolt to bolt or connection bolt to bolt, center to center. And on the rear struts, I ended up changing from 1 inch to 2 1/4 also. So go ahead and set your struts to 2 1/4 as your initial setting. That will give you some better feel for it. And what really was happening, one thing I noticed is that when I was going to the rear PSI, when I was putting it up to 100, etc., anything over about 65 was making the airbag touch the rear upper control arm on the rears. So trying to run at a 14-inch ride height was way difficult because the bag was hitting the air or the upper control arm. So I'm going to go ahead and switch those to C6 base. I'll make a separate video for that. And then a lot of these settings are going to have to be reset. So everything is pretty good. These aired out ones here, these are where the tire is hitting the inner fender. So had to make some adjustments up to about 12 3/4 on each of those. That's up about 7/8 of an inch or an inch or so. So if you change your struts to 2 1/4, you're going to get somewhere in the 12 3/4, 13, 12.5 range on everything. And then you can also change your lifted up to about 16 inches with 120 PSI. Just know anything over 65 means that bag is going to hit that control arm. And that's not a good thing to ride around like that. So like I said, I'll make another video on the changes to the upper control arm, what is entailed with that. I will, I guess, include that into the video description to make sure that you do need to change that if you need to go higher than what they say. The suspension company says you don't need to change everything. I do agree with that, but there's a little asterisk there saying that at a certain point, their airbags are going to hit the control arms, and I'm going to show you a way to hopefully rectify that. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time.